10 years ago, Christian music filled stadiums and sold millions of compact discs. Today, its market share has crumbled to under 2%. Radio stations are vanishing, album sales have collapsed, and most artists cannot survive on streaming pennies. The industry's crash is not just financial, it is exposing a deeper identity crisis that threatens the future of faith-based music. What caused such a rapid and total collapse? Can anything survive when the foundation gives way? In the early 2000s, Christian music was riding high. In the first half of 2002, Christian and gospel album sales jumped 18% to 23.4 million units sold, even as the rest of the music industry shrank by nearly 10%. That brief surge masked deeper problems. By the end of the decade, the bottom fell out. Christian music's market share slid below 2%, and the decline has only accelerated since. Radio, once the backbone of the industry, became a battleground for survival. National networks like K-Love expanded aggressively, buying up struggling local stations across the country. Smaller independent Christian broadcasters could not compete with the scale and advertising muscle of these giants. Many disappeared entirely, taking with them the regional voices and diverse playlists that once defined Christian airwaves. The shift was not just about technology or taste, it was demographic. The core audience for Christian radio aged faster than the general population. Older listeners clung to their favorite stations, but younger generations moved on. As streaming platforms took over, the industry's reliance on physical album sales, including CDs, cassettes, even vinyl, became a liability. Christian music's audience was slower to adapt, and by the time streaming became dominant, the damage was done. With fewer albums sold and radio reach shrinking, revenue streams dried up. Power concentrated in the hands of a few national networks, who decided which songs and which artists would get airplay. For those on the outside, exposure became nearly impossible. The loss was not just financial, it was cultural. The gatekeepers now controlled the microphone. Streaming promised a lifeline, but the numbers do not add up for most Christian artists. On Spotify, a song needs millions of plays just to break 4 figures. The average payout per stream is around half a cent, sometimes less. For a mid-level artist, 1 million streams might mean a few $1,000s, before taxes, label cuts, and co-writer splits. That is not a living wage. The few with crossover hits survive. The rest face a math problem with no answer. Touring once filled the gap. Now, the circuit is shrinking. Festivals that anchored the calendar are vanishing. Ichthus, one of the longest-running Christian festivals, shut down in 2013. Soulfest, a staple in New England, held its last event in 2023. Dozens of smaller gatherings have disappeared, taking with them the stages where emerging acts built followings. Churches, too, have pulled back on hosting concerts, wary of costs and shrinking attendance. For many artists, the loss of live opportunities means the end of the road. There are fewer venues, fewer gigs, fewer fans willing or able to pay. The pipeline for new talent is drying up. Fewer young musicians are entering the scene, and even fewer can afford to stay. The industry that once promised a platform for every calling now offers little more than a lottery ticket. For most, the dream is no longer sustainable. Capital Christian Music Group sits at the heart of the industry's financial web, but its decisions answer to Universal Music Group, the world's largest music corporation. The people greenlighting new worship songs or artist contracts are often far removed from the faith communities these songs are supposed to serve. When a song climbs the CCLI charts, the rewards flow not just to the writers, but to publishers and administrators, most of whom answer to corporate boards. Integrity Music, for example, draws nearly all its church-related revenue, about 97%, from CCCILWIN licensing. That means churches across the country pay annual fees, and those fees are pooled, tracked, and distributed twice a year based on which songs get sung the most. The more a song appears in church reports, the bigger the payout. For some catalogs, CCLY royalties alone can top $100,000 a year, with one dominant song making up nearly 80% of the earnings. The pipeline is tightly managed. Capital Christian Music Group, Essential Music, and Integrity now control almost 80% of the CCLY Top 100. This concentration means Publishers have every incentive to push songs that are easy to teach, easy to sing, and easy to replace because the next quarter's hit will bring in the next round of licensing fees. Breaking into this system is expensive. At major Christian conferences, smaller artists often pay thousands of dollars just for a slot on the showcase stage. Even church worship leaders, especially at megachurches, act as informal scouts, deciding which songs get introduced to their congregations and, by extension, the national charts. The end result is a small group of executives, publishers, and gatekeepers who decide what worship sounds like and who profits when the songs are sung. A single verse from A Mighty Fortress is Our God contains more doctrine than most modern worship albums combined. Martin Luther's hymn, written in 1529, stacks line after line with concrete claims. God as a bulwark, the defeat of Satan, Christ's victory, the certainty of God's word. 4 verses, each one a compact sermon. By contrast, a typical worship chorus from the past year repeats a handful of phrases, sometimes a dozen times in a row. You are good, you are good, you are good, sung over a swelling pad, with little explanation of what that means or why it matters. The change is not accidental. In 2023, Brandon Lake, one of the most streamed Christian artists, told worship leaders to avoid Christianese, the kind of language that might confuse or exclude people who are not church insiders. He named Holy, Holy, Holy as an example of a song that feels inaccessible. The goal, he said, is to make sure anyone in the room can sing along, even if they have never set foot in a church before. A word count analysis tells the story. Classic hymns average 80 to 120 unique words. The top 10 worship songs on the CCLY chart last year averaged under 35. Repetition ratios have soared. In some cases, a chorus is sung more than 20 times in a single performance. The incentive is clear. Songs that are easy to teach, easy to remember, and easy to license will climb the charts and fill the coffers. But the cost is depth. The more the music aims for universal appeal, the less distinctly Christian it becomes. In 2019, Marty Sampson, one of Hillsong's most influential songwriters, posted that he was genuinely losing his faith, openly wrestling with doctrines he once sang about. The next year, John Steingard of Hawk Nelson announced he no longer believed in God, revealing he had kept silent for years because leaving the industry would destroy his livelihood. Kevin Max, once a voice of DC Talk, identified as ex-evangelical and began exploring universalism. Derek Webb, former frontman of Caedmon's Call, left Christianity and now publicly mocks the faith he once helped shape. Jennifer Knapp, a Grammy-nominated artist, came out as gay and stepped away from evangelical circles. Aaron Gillespie of Underoath and the Almost left the faith, became anti-theist, and later returned to a different kind of belief. George Perdiccas, a founding member of the Newsboys, declared his atheism. These are not obscure names. Their songs shaped youth groups and Sunday mornings for an entire generation. Steingard's admission lands hardest. The industry can trap artists who have lost faith because it has become their primary source of income. Hillsong's global brand unraveled in 2022. Brian Houston resigned after misconduct findings and charges related to covering up his father's abuse. Carl Lentz, once the face of Hillsong New York, was fired for an extramarital affair. Multiple campuses closed. Yet Oceans remains one of the most sung worship songs in America. Bethel Church drew controversy in 2019 when its leaders led public prayers for the resurrection of a worship leader's child, reigniting debates about theology and spectacle. Maverick City Music fractured in 2022, removing Dante Bowe after public statements and social media posts that were at odds with the group's values. As the old guard stumbles, independent artists like Keith and Kristen Getty, Sandra McCracken, and Andrew Peterson build new followings outside the industry machine, funding albums directly through their listeners and reviving hymnody rooted in conviction rather than commerce. Today, Christian music stands at a crossroads, with market share shrinking, core beliefs diluted, and artists questioning what remains. When faith becomes a product, conviction is optional. The future now depends on whether substance can outlast the collapse of spectacle. The test is not popularity, it is faithfulness. What survives will define the next generation.